Welcome back to A Bevy of Bloods for round 8 of the 2023 season. In this episode, Stevo and I go over the game against the Pies where our wayward kicking spoiled a great effort. So, fluff up your tail feathers and settle in for a potentially biased yarn about all things to do with our beloved Bloods.
Your City Swans!
Okay, Swans fans, I welcome back the Finnish equivalent of Luke Parker, sort of. Stevo, welcome back to the potty, mate.
Luke Parker, thanks, Chris. It's good to be back. Luke Parker. I did actually once wear the number 26 for a couple of seasons, but that's about the closest I can get to feeling like Luke Parker, I think. But yeah, good to be back. Got another loss to go through, but that's how it's been this year. So I guess we get into it.
Yeah, no worries. Unfortunately, you're right. But just before we kick off with the game details, if you don't mind, if you enjoy our podcast and you want to support Swans family and Swans content generally, make sure to like us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, follow us on any one of those. And if you see us in the social medias anywhere around the world, whatever takes your fancy, make sure to give us a like and follow there as well. It helps us a lot with what we're doing here. Now, let's get stuck into the game details. Last Sunday, our Sydney Swans were defeated by the Collingwood Magpies by 29 points with a score of 6-12-48 to 11-11-77. So, Stevo, we'll crack off straight away. What were your first impressions after that?
Look, it was a much better effort than the past couple of games we've had against good teams. I mean, Demons and Cats thrashed us, but still not quite close to good enough to beat a real contender. I mean, we were in the game with a couple of minutes left in the last quarter. We went into three-quarter time, a couple of points behind only, and then just couldn't get it done. Collingwood were a better team. And we played really, really well in the second quarter, especially. I was really enjoying the second quarter. It looked like we'd turned a corner, played some really, really fast, aggressive footy. It was great. And then the second half, Collingwood had all the answers, and we didn't look like a top four team, and they did. And that was kind of how I saw the game.
Yeah, fair enough. Like I kind of saw us playing a pretty good uncontested game where we're trying to not let them have their hands on the ball. I mean, there's a couple of stats that we'll talk it through in a second that will show that as well. And that was really positive. It kind of took away their game, let us play with the ball a bit more, take their dash away. But we really were lucky a lot of times where they fumbled, overkicked it, overused it. Bounced off the hands. It must have been slippery out there because both teams looked a bit ordinary for the first quarter or so. So we had opportunity Saturday, and we had the opportunity to take ours, and we didn't. And our wayward kicking, I felt, was the major difference. But we were, as you said, kind of they had answers for stuff that we had, and we really couldn't figure out a way around it. I mean, we were plus 99 in uncontested possessions. That's beautiful. That's the control of the game, and that was consistent. I think at half time, I'm pretty sure like 49 or 50 uncontested possessions up. So that trend continued throughout the whole game, where we were actively trying to control it. Out of the back line, we did a good job with it, but as soon as it kind of got close to our forward line, it seemed like the spark wasn't there anymore. The sharpness of the tool, the spearheads were blunt, and we just weren't getting a whole lot done. What did you see on your side there?
Oh, yeah, you said it. I think it was just missed opportunities. I was just rewatching the game just now before we started recording just to see if anything else popped up, and I must have counted, I think, like 8 or 9 or 10 missed shots at goal that, you'd think most times you would hit those goals. And if you don't hit them, especially against Collingwood, you're not going to win. They're a good team. Like, they're probably the best team in the comp and favourites of the premiership. If you want to beat them, you got to take most of those chances, and we didn't.
Yeah, look, Hall said the same thing, didn't he? He focused on it. It was like if you don't, you have to take your chances, especially against the good teams. And exactly as you said, if we can't kick goals, you can't win footy. Like it's as simple as that. We can try to win a game at 11, 27 behinds or something, but it's not going to happen. So yeah, a couple of errant kicks. The one that comes to mind straight off the bat is that maybe it's a bit unfair because I think he was carrying a bit of an injury and the ball drop would have been right. But Ladham's goal at the end of the first quarter, he did an amazing job to get that mark against who was it? The other ruckman. bugger. Um,
The big tall blonde bloke, you mean?
yes,
Frampton, isn't it?
Frampton. Thank you. Yes.
From
Um,
Crows.
yeah, like he had a pretty decent game too, but yeah, great mark right in front, set shot from 20 out. Laddams rolls up, drop was bad, and wayward, and we missed that. And I'm like, if because at that point I think I think already had like two or three misses. I think one from Heaney, one from Haywood, perhaps one from Papley at that point. And I'm like, we got to get this one. Surely we're right in front. This is going to be a big turning point, getting them up. And yeah, missing that goal was a bit frustrating. Granted, he was carrying a bit of an injury in his left arm, but I don't really know what to take of that. But that was just kind of summed up the game basically for me. We had an opportunity and we just didn't capitalize basically.
Yeah.
What about any other good bad stats that you saw on your side there, mate?
I'll come back to the goal kicking again, or a
Mm,
different version of the goal kicking. We're talking about 2 goals, 6 in 3 quarters. So the only quarter really where the Swans kicked multiple goals was the second quarter. They kicked 4. They got 1 in the first, 1 in the last, none in the third. So 2 goals across 3 quarters and 48 total points for the game is not going to win you a game of AFL football against anybody. I went and had a look at the previous matches this season, and out of 72 games, that 48 points from the Swans would not have won a single one of those games. The lowest winning score so far this year is Collingwood with 59 points last week against the Crows. The drawn game early in the year was 58-58, but nobody won. And there's only been 4 winning scores in the 60s. That's out of 72 games. So you're not going to win an AFL game with that score. And really, we talk about 2 goals in 3 quarters, but it was actually 2 goals in 3.5 quarters because Shather's goal in that second quarter that started that 4-goal run in the back half of the quarter in the second term came at 14 minutes 46 on the clock. So really, we're talking about scoring 2 goals in 3.5 full quarters of AFL. That's not good enough to win an AFL game against anybody.
mm, mm. That's pretty interesting actually. So really we were just hot for a short amount of time and we're kind of suggesting that we're more competitive whereas we weren't really. Like we really weren't being in any way aggressive or dangerous with the ball up forward. It sounds like nothing really was going on.
Yeah, and not being able to seal the deal either. Like with 3 minutes left in the third quarter, Swans are up by a point, so they're in a potentially winning position. And then, I
Mm.
mean, Collingwood is a very strong last quarter team. We know that they've been doing that for the whole past previous season and this year. Like they're a very very good finishing team, and just like the Crows the week before, the Swans didn't have enough to go with them at the end.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, one of the other things that kind of that forward line wasn't doing, which was typically a bit of a Sydney trait for last year, was our forward pressure. And this week it was just off. It has been a little bit off generally, but we only had the 6 tackles made in our forward line, and a couple of them, no, I don't think any of I think maybe Buddy had one, maybe Papley had one, maybe Sheeta had one tackle or so. So there really wasn't any pressure in that back line to keep the ball in to give us multiple chances at goal. It just wasn't there. Our stoppages and even now moving around there, we just had no answers for them. And it's a real shame because that was what made Papley so damn dangerous when you get multiple attacks at the ball, a couple of tackles, ball fumbles off to the side, and then it's Papley like a little velociraptor trying to grab on any ball that comes his way and slam it through the poles. But yeah, we just couldn't get it done. We just could not even get enough pressure going at that point to make anything worth it. So real disappointing on a couple of points. Not only the kicks a goal, but also the general running of that forward line is not as sharp as it needs to be. And a few questions to ask about it really. Is it the kicking of goal? Is it the entry? I think entry was a problem for a little while there. I don't think we had any problem with entry necessarily this time around. We had multiple shots at it. Just couldn't control it in there basically. Any other spots, mate? Any other points here in the good, the bad, and the stats to factor in?
There's one I will raise which comes up in the fan chat, especially is the free kicks. We lost the free kicks 24-10. But I'll say that watching the game to begin with, and then again watching the replay, I didn't really feel like that was a factor. Honestly, there was maybe a couple of frees that they got where I thought, "Come on, what was that for?" And then maybe a couple where I thought we could have got one, but that was about it. So despite the huge differential in terms of the raw number. It didn't feel like, at least to me, that affected the game. You were there, weren't you? You were live at the ground. Was it like live?
Surprisingly quiet by the Pies fans. I was maybe because I was in the nosebleeds because the Pies fans won't let you sit close to the ground because
No.
home ground. So we're up there in the nosebleed section. Um, but so I didn't feel that the crowd was that loud outside of them. Maybe this is a segue into the booing bit, but until they were really booing some of the players. Other than that, they seemed to be out of it, which was a good thing. And it was only the fourth quarter when they kicked a couple and they started getting up and about. And I think Majacek had that wild freaking bicycle kick goal, and I'm like, that's it, game's over at that point because
Yeah.
the crowd was entirely into it at that point. Yeah, so that was that. Well, look, and to your point, I kind of agree. I don't think the umpiring, despite it being plus 14 for them, necessarily lost us the game. I agree. There was some pretty wayward decisions from both directions, but I think Horse has said this in the past. You're not meant. It's not meant to be an equal free kick count. It's not meant to be 24-24. It's not meant to be equal. It's not how. It's not how the game works. Um, it gets played the way it's played, but I do feel that we were kind of undone by a couple of decisions. But these are biased Swannies eyes that you have in front of you. Um,
Yeah, and like I'll say on that, the free
yeah,
kicks is usually one of the last stats that I pay attention to after the
mm,
game because very seldom does it tell the tale of what happened.
yeah. No, I agree to that. The quickly, I don't want to. I think we spoke about this just before we started here today. We don't want to give too much air to this buddy booing thing because I frankly think that the media's just overcooked it. But let me, if I just can lay it all out, the at the ground, I don't know what it showed like on TV, but for sure at the ground, every time that buddy got close to the ball, went up for a mark, you know, had possession, went for a tackle, they were booing him. They were clearly booing Buddy. They were also clearly booing Papley every time that Papley got close to the ball. Not as with as much intent, not with as much fury, but they definitely were on Papley's back. So since then, at the press conference, someone asked Horse, "What do you think about booing?" Horse's response is, "We haven't played it for 10 years," which we spoke about last year. Haven't played in the MCG since 2013. We haven't played it for 10 years. It's just unnecessary to boo a champion like that. I think it was just unnecessary. And that was the basis of what he said. And that was all he said. And it went very quickly. The media since then have picked it up, really ran with it. Every talk show's had a chat about it because it's Collingwood. It's a big thing. It's Buddy Franklin. It's the only thing that Melbourne talks about when they talk about Sydney. And even gone so far as the Collingwood Magpies have actually released a statement suggesting that booing players is not what they want to see their club at. And they suggested that it's probably something that they want their club fans to do less of. So, mate, with all of that context, do you have a take on it? What's your side on all of this?
Oh, I mean, I can't believe we're still talking about it. You know, it's I mean, this guy. If we're talking about Franklin specifically, and you know, booing goes on in sports all around the world all the time for different reasons and in different context. And if we're talking about Franklin in particular, because that's what we are talking about, that's what's been raised in the media, and they've drawn attention to it, etc. And Longmire has even felt the need to comment on. He's a champion of the game, and if that's what sections of the Collingwood crowd feel they need to do, then you know that says enough about how they approach football and champions of the sport. And it's disappointing. I'd be just as disappointed if it was Swans fans who were doing it, just like I was last year when Swans fans went at young Jack Ginningville, 20-year-old, 19-year-old sitting on the bench. I found that really disappointing and unnecessary. And again, with Franklin, it's the same thing.
Yep. No, I agree to that. I think if we're gonna, so what, throw stones in glass houses, like don't. If we suggest the same thing, we don't boo. And I agree. I thought the booing of Ginnivan last season at the prelim was just unnecessary, and it was purely because the media hyped it up at that point, and Swans fans bit, and that was really really disappointing. I'm disappointed in Collingwood fans for just booing Buddy for no damn reason. Um, and it is part of the game. It's unnecessary, especially just targeting players like that. But I think it's been overcooked anyway, just frankly. So I don't know, leave it there. I don't think this is going to necessarily be a trend, especially with the club coming out and being so strong about it. The Collingwood club is a different club these days now that Eddie's around, not around anymore. And so I would just suggest this much that that is the true story. The true story here, from Swans fans' perspective, is how Collingwood has apologised for what they've done to Nicky Winmar. They have apologised to Swans and Buddy for booing Buddy. That's the storyline. The storyline is how the club in the Pies are doing what we want them to do, which is stamping out some behaviour of their members that we don't like and they don't see as being a positive impact to the AFL. We're just waiting on the apology for Goodsey now, but until then, that's fine. That's where it stands. I think we've made enough of it already at this point. Mate, okay, let's get straight into some of the good things, the bad things, favorite moments, missed chances, anything on your radar there to speak of.
For a game that we lost fairly convincingly in the end, I've got a few little highlights. I really like Clark's goal at the start. That was the Swans' first goal, and he got given the job on the younger Dacos, who's probably the favourite for the Brownlow medal at the moment, or very close to it. He's been playing amazing football. He got sent to him, and it's really nice mentally, both for the tagger and for the team, when a tagger gets an early goal on their opponent like that. So it's one thing to negate, which Clark can do quite effectively. He doesn't always have as much of an impact with the football, but he's very good at negating. And to see him get on the board was great. Dacos did get the better of him as the game went on. I think Dacos had 10 touches or something in the last quarter when they ran over us. Clark did a serviceable job. He didn't have a huge impact himself on the game, and Dacos didn't have his normal 40 touches, but he still got 25, I think, and had a solid impact. I think he was still their second best possession winner on the ground, but whether that role is beneficial to the team as a whole, I guess, is another discussion. It does free up other guys. It meant that people like Crisp and Pendlebury and stuff were getting more footy because Dacos would push himself into the contest sometimes, and then Clark would be a bit in no man's land as to what to do, and then one of the other Pies guys would get the footy. But still, really nice to see Clark get some scoreboard impact, because taggers often get no plaudits at all, and he did. He got a really good goal on Dacos early.
Yeah, like his game out there was to stop Dacos, and I think, I agree with you. I think for the most part of the game, he did pretty well at that. Dacos was getting around the ball, and you know that they were going to send the Clarkey to him. So I suggest that the club was working out ways to shake him off or to give him some extra use, and he seemed to do that in the end. But having said that, it seemed like we kind of ran out of gas as well in that last quarter. So the fact that he got loose is no surprise. But yeah, happy for Clarkey to get another goal. I think it's kind of a bit of a regular thing when he's actively got a tag against someone. It seems like he's scoring at least one that game. I think he missed out last week when he was up against Whitfield, but he had a clear shot at goal and he missed it. But yeah, he always seems to get himself a shot at goal when he's tagging. So yeah, it's good on him. I was happy to see it.
Yeah, and this can happen too when when like a really hardball player like Clark, because Clark, he goes hard, he puts a lot of physical pressure, he runs hard. And when players like that tag, sometimes you can see this, because the really, really elite player, in this case Dacos, will take him to where the football is, and then he can beat him for it. He can win the ball himself. And so if he was sort of running around trying to find the footy on his own, maybe it would be less likely he's going to get used, or he's going to be in the right spot. But when he's next to that top guy, he'll take him to it, and off he goes, and he got a fantastic goal.
Yeah, that's it. What did you think about the niggly biggly, the in your face action in that first quarter, when I think it was Clarkey and Papley, the instigators against Dacos there, and it caused a bit of a fracas. What did you think about all that?
I think it's probably cost a bunch of blokes some petrol money for sure. I think what was 8 or 9 got fined or something from that. I didn't look at the full list, but yeah, I think the AFL got a bit of a kick in the bank account, or like an increase to their bank account, kick to the Swans and Pies players' bank accounts. Look, those sort of things, I often think it can galvanise the side that. Because if you go after a young player, because Dacos is, everyone forgets, just because he's one of the best players in the league, he's like 20-year-old guy. It's his second season. And when someone goes after your young player, which the Swans did, they tried to unsettle him, it can sometimes inspire your team to sort of stand up for your young guy. And it looked like, at least in terms of the aftermath, straight afterwards, I mean, Collingwood went boom, boom, they got a shot on goal and missed it, and they scored a goal not long after it. So they certainly won the short-term game in that one. because they were the ones who put points on the scoreboard straight after it.
Yeah, Horse at the presser suggested that he doesn't mind it so long as we don't give away a free kick, and we gave away a free kick.
Yeah,
And they got an inside
exactly.
50 as a as a result of it, which ended up causing a goal. So his point of it's just like, yeah, that's great, but just is undisciplined, ends up with us behind the scoreboard. So yeah, anyway, that's kind of interesting. I will take a missed chance if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Ladham's my brain fade. Ladham's brain fades continue. One of the jokes that I had at the game was he's allowed one per game. So if if we go back and think about it, there's a couple of, I can't remember what the one was last week, but I remember him. He gave away a free kick this week by not giving the ball directly back to, I think it was Darcy Moore. He kind of threw it to the guy in the mark, and they got a 50-meter penalty for it. And you could see his eyes are just like, oh bugger, I've stuffed it up again. He's done other things every week, which just makes us question, like, is his brain connected sometimes? But yeah, so that's a missed chance. But the shot at goal, I suggest that should have been that missed chance, but he got two this week. So he frustrates the living daylights out of Swans fans. They call for his head every time he does something like that. And despite him doing good things around the ball and with the ball and against the competition, with no backup, yeah, look, I feel bad. I feel pretty bad for Laddams, mate. You saw that, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and he missed the whole first quarter too. So if you're saying that he gets one a week, but this week he had two, he only played 3 quarters.
Yeah, well, he got one of them done in the first quarter, I guess. So, yeah.
He's due for a clean week or two.
Yeah. I think of all people, he's needing a rest. Look, when he came off the ground at the very first centre bounce, the very, very, very first start of the game, he got smacked in the head with a knee, but also
Yeah,
kind of, went off the ground holding his arm, and it seemed like he had a bit of a stinger or something, or his nerves got bashed up a bit in his left arm, and it took him an entire quarter to get back out there again. Noddy had the point last week where he kind of suggested that maybe Laddams kind of makes it a little bit about himself. Like, how he used the example of Dangerfield. When Dangerfield kind of gets a little bit of an injury or a bump, he kind of, makes a big deal out of it. There's a bit of extra strapping, it's a bit of an ordeal. And Laddams, I don't know. Like he might have got proper smacked around in that contest, but he looked like pretty reluctant to come out. And it seemed like the coaches were convincing him that he could. That's what I saw from the telecast when I was watching the replay. So I kind of hope that his arm's okay. They didn't send him out there for no good reason, but he seemed to play the rest of it and use more of that arm as the game went on. But yeah, do you see anything there different?
yeah. I guess it's one thing to be told by a doctor that you're all right, but if you don't feel confident, then you don't feel all right, do you? Like it's
Mm.
and with him, I mean, I like Adams. I think that that for a relatively early career ruckman who's played 50 games, I think he's looking pretty good actually. I don't maybe expect him to be like a game breaking type ruckman at this point in his career, or maybe even ever. But for what we have with him, which is like really Hickey's been out all year. He's our second ruck who's playing as a first ruck, and I think he's done a pretty good job for a 50 game player.
Yeah, I agree. I think the bevy, as a general state, are fans of Laddams, despite these consistent brain fades. They just do our heads in. So, but yeah, everything you said there, I agree with. I think he's doing the job and doing a decent job of what he's doing there. Any other favorite moments, missed chances there, Steve-O?
I got one favourite moment. We'll get some
Yeah.
more positives going just to try and get the mood back up a bit. Luke Parker's running bounce off halfback in the second quarter. That was amazing. He got the ball just inside the defensive 50 and he just busted through, puffed his gigantic chest out, had a bounce and off he went. And you don't see Luke Parker take a running bounce like that very often. For a second I thought it was like Nick Blakey had been shrunken and widened or something. He was cutting out of halfback like that. So it was good to see Luke Parker putting on the afterburners and really cutting the lines. I enjoyed that. I replayed it a few times.
Yeah, I do remember that spot too. It's like he got himself some space, and you can see his eyes go, "What?" And he just took off. He's just like, "Look, I'll get myself a bounce here." Like, yeah, Parker's typically thrown his head into the mix there.
I
Yeah,
loved
no,
it.
yeah. Anything else on your side, mate?
I just thought we were talking about missed chances. Well, we just talked about the second quarter again with Parker. The second quarter, Swans are great. Like it was this freewheeling, really, really aggressive, like get the ball forward, like knock it on type style. And we were able to cut through Collingwood's clusters of numbers through the centre of the ground and up the wings. We had to cut through that and then generate an outnumber going forward in our forward 50, and it was really good. We scored from it several times. And then in the second half, they came out playing. It was much more careful, and I don't know if that's because Collingwood adjusted stuff at halftime. There's a good chance that they did, and you can't really see that watching on the telly or even at the ground. It's hard to know exactly what their instructions are. But the Swans weren't doing that in quarters 3 and 4. They would try to do it. They get held up, and then they'd have to try and slowly chip kick their way around it, and it meant that we weren't putting any scoreboard pressure on in that second half when we scored one goal.
Yeah, no, I agree to that. I saw the same thing on my side. Like we kind of were controlling the game, and I figured. I even said at the halftime report, like I suspect Collingwood's going to come back out and try to control their game a bit more, to try to get more possession of the ball, turn that into a freewheeling style that they typically have. And it looked exactly that's what happened. At that point, it felt like we were in the back foot and we couldn't get our hands on it really to do anything worthwhile. But hey, let's kick it. End it with a bit of positivity. Papley's long bomb goal from the boundary. That was very tidy. I like, especially when he gets up and around. Swans fans and the team itself get so excited. So nice to see. You always need that. And Sheether's first goal at his second AFL game. Like I personally don't think I still don't think he's kicked it, but but we'll take it, right? We'll take it. So good on him. Unfortunately, he's out with a bit of a hyperextension of the knee. But we'll talk about that in a second. Mate, okay, let's move on to the Bob medal, which is our equivalent of the Bob Skilton. We give 3, 2, 1 points to the best Swans player in each game, with the highest points receiving the ability. What are we going to give away this week? I don't really know. I haven't really considered this. Don't the Finnish have that kind of weird canned fish thing that apparently is a delicacy?
Nah, that's Sweden. We can give them a tin of that anyway. We can get them some.
Okay, cool. So
Yeah,
the
we can get a bit of that. It's called I don't even know if I can pronounce it properly. It's like surströmming or something like this. It's foul.
All right. Well, the can of foul Struskruven or whatever it was pronounced as, it goes out to Errol Gordon for 3 points, Parker for 2 points, and Foxy for 1 point. Mate, do you want to take it away with Gordon?
I will. He was everywhere. He brought his own football to Melbourne on his flight south. I think he just packed it in his luggage and off he went. And he didn't want to flick it off to anyone else too. He had 37 touches, 32 kicks. I love that number.
Hmm.
That is awesome. 5 handballs out of 37 touches, which I think is awesome. 13 contested touches, 13 marks, 7 clearances, 17 intercepts, 659 meters of the MCG gained, and about 1,000 fantasy points for those who play fantasy. And I think, and I put this here just because I think the fantasy people thought that he was going to crack probably the 200 at some point in the game, which is like getting 150 runs in a 2020 game in the first 5 overs. For those not familiar with fantasy, he only got 3 touches in the last quarter, just to slow down and prove that he's human. So massive game from Errol.
Yeah, look, and the big numbers there, and what you touched on there, with 32 kicks out of 37 disposals. His weapon is his kick. We know that. He's got an amazing boot. So to see him an opportunity to use that more often is the difference. Is a huge game. It was had some beautiful kicks, greatly weighted between 3 different Collingwood players, and he just like slots it on top of Millsy and stuff. So yeah, I love to see it. I know he's playing a bit more outside, which is something that I called for a little while back. I'm glad that Horse got my fax, whatever I sent through.
You got the
Um,
facts. Good.
he got the
Yeah.
facts. He got it coming through. So I'm happy to see more impact. Whether it necessarily aligns with a winning Swans team is still the question, but the numbers look really good. And him using it and having more of it is what I like to see. I also loved his general attack at play. When he had the opportunity to get involved in the contest, he threw his head into it. He loves it. He loves a dirty play, and he continually seems like the kind of player you can lean on a bit. The tougher the game, the more he's going to kind of impact himself or inject himself into it. And that's what I saw. So I'm pretty happy with the way old Gordon's going, mate. Do you see this as
Yeah.
being his role now going forward, or do you think they're still going to trial him out on the inside?
I honestly think that the Swans after 8 rounds are still trying to get their midfield wing half forward mix right, and he might get tossed around a bit more before they get it sorted, because he can play any of those positions. Whether you throw him inside on the wing, half forward flank, like he's good everywhere. Where he fits best for the Swans will probably depend on how some of the other pieces like Heaney, Mills slot in, like where their best spots for winning games end up being, and it might change as the game progresses. It might change as the weeks go on. So I reckon we'll probably see him in a variety of roles for the rest of the year. He can play everywhere, so
Yeah.
you can put him everywhere.
I'd like, now that I've kind of got my way with on the wing a bit with Stevens out, I'd like to see him go up half forward a little bit more as well. I think we're really missing that kick up that way as well. We got Florent, we got Stevens, who I predict is going to come back in with a bit of a fire up his bum. We saw McInerney come back into the team after getting a week rest or a week being told off that you're not playing your full game, and he played a lot better as well. So we got two decent wingers that can kind of fill in there. Rowbottom sometimes rolls in as well. Um, I would like to see him go up forward, if not for him just being able to kick them, also for him being able to play some good kicks in some dangerous areas so that the forwards can have an easier shot at goal rather than being slammed across on the sideline somewhere, so on the boundary. So let's see where it ends up. But yeah, we've got Frio this week and we'll find out where he ends up. Mate, 2 points for Parker. Your equivalent, apparently. Mate, what did
Yeah.
you think? What did you think about Parker?
And just before I go on, I've looked it up. I've found the name of that fish that Errol's going to get a tin of. It is called surströmming, and it's made from Baltic Sea herring, fermented in a weak brine for at least 6 months, then lightly salted in the can to prevent rotting. And then this thing that I've found says that those brave enough to try often eat small pieces in a fat bread wrap along with waxy potatoes, sour cream, red onion, chives, and dill. So we're going to get Errol all of the trimmings. It won't just be the can of fish. We'll get him the bread and the potatoes and the sour cream, etc. So that'll be in the post within a week, I imagine.
Excellent. Good to hear.
Yep.
Pretty efficient here. And I do
Yep.
remember that they say you have to open up that can underneath water, otherwise it'll stink out your house for life. I recall them saying that. So good luck, Errol. We won't be there.
No, you can do that on his own.
Yeah, that's it. Hopefully not in my suburb, wherever he lives. Yeah, sorry, Parker. 2 points for Parker, mate. I think, and I'm going to start off straight away.
Go for it.
I called it last week that the GWS games is the game from then on end. Parker plays well. It was a theory made up on the spot last week because last year the GWS game was the first game of the season. He wanted to have a cracking season. This year he's been off. Last week we played against GWS. He was best on ground for that outside of Toby Green with that last kick of goal. Sorry for bringing it up again. And since then, 2 games in a row, he's played really well, mate. I think my theory is holding intact. What do you reckon?
I reckon it's solid. It sounds solid. You've got
Okay.
the numbers to back you up.
Thank you. Yeah, let's talk through his numbers. What do you see there?
34 touches, 5 tackles. He was massive. He got a lot of hard ball, a lot of like really sort of crashing packs, body on the line type stuff, which helped clear traffic to get our ball loose out to our runners. I mean, for me, him and Goulden were pretty close, equal best on ground. It was pretty hard to split them, and just that really really strong body around the contest that he gave, and he was at so many contests. He got 34 touches. That's a lot of football. And he's not just there. Like every contest that he's in, he has an impact on the contest, whether it be with his body or by getting his hands on the football and getting out to other guys. Massive game from Luke Parker.
Yeah, like what you suggest there is bang on. Like he had 2 center clearances, 3 stoppage clearances, like really throwing his head over it, making sure that we had some use of it out of that center, especially against the likes of Collingwood, who have some pretty tidy center boys themselves, and 2 1%ers, and of course a bounce to go with his effort.
Yes.
Like huge numbers for Parker. This is the Parker I expect to see. I mean, granted, it's a particularly good game for Parker, but that style of Parker is nice to see. So I hope that he carries it on for the rest of the season. We really need that midfield working a bit better. All right, for 1 point, we went back and forth a little bit. We had a few names that we could have thrown in there. We've settled with Foxy. Mate, do you want to take it away with Foxy's effort and quality of the game?
He was fantastic. I thought he had a lot of the ball, 24 touches, I think. But he's playing as a key defender, so his touches. I mean, that's not important, but he's also having an impact with the ball, and his touches are of quality. It was at 80% efficiency. 9 intercepts. in the back half, and he's playing as effectively a lot of the time an anchor in that back line in that role, and very much undersized and handling himself very very well with the likes of Rampy and Paddy McCartan not available. He's just slotted in and shown that he's able to both contain their important forward threats and then be very very good getting the ball out of there and hitting targets up the field.
Yeah, he's a clean user. When he touches the ball, I don't see a clanger coming. You know what I mean? Like he
Mm.
seems to just really be very, very aware of where these players are. He executes his kicks. 80% efficiency, 24 disposals in that back line against the forward, excellent forward pressure that Collingwood has is brilliant. 9 intercepts to go with it. So he's doing both things. He was moving the ball on and he was also stopping it. So yeah, very, very happy with Foxy. His game is really improved. And what is he? Is he 29 now, 30 or so? Like,
He's getting along.
yeah. So maybe the fact that he hasn't played that much AFL footy is kind of good for his body holding up, as opposed to some of the others. So, touch wood. I hope we get the best out of Foxy continuing out. Mate, any notable mentions, extra players that we suggested had a pretty good game and just were unlucky not to get themselves a point?
We had a couple. I'll start with which one will I start with? I'll start with Blakey. He was good. He had some really good run off the back. He set up a lot of play. A couple of times, what he tried didn't come off, but I don't really care because he's doing it. Like I'd much rather him be taking the game on and occasionally it doesn't work than
Mm.
playing within himself and not playing the natural game of his, which is to really run hard and cut lines and slice through the middle of the ground coming from half back. So I liked his game a lot.
Yep, beauty. I agree. I will take on. I'll put two together, Rowie and Lloyd. I felt both were very good. Both putting their head over the ball more so. Rowie, obviously. I felt Rowie had a really good game, doing the role that he does. I'm a big Rowie fan, has been for some time. So I'd like to see that. And Lloydie as well, playing that different role that he's done for this last 2 seasons, which is just putting more pressure on. It felt like he was really driving that hard. He was getting over it. He was throwing his body into things like he was willing the team as well. So the effort for Lloydie was 100% there. I was really happy. Any other names on your chart to give some shouts out to?
Hayden McLean did really well, especially in that first quarter with Laddams off. He effectively carried the ruck more or less by himself
Mm.
in that whole first quarter. For the game, he ended up with 19 touches at 95% efficient, which is huge. He was at 35 rucks. He won 10 hitouts from that. He was the highest on the ground for rating points. I'm not really sure what the ratings points like how they're calculated, but that's good, surely. 4 tackles, a couple of contested marks, which was second on the ground. And what I thought was really interesting was that of his 19 touches, 9 of those came in the first quarter when Laddams was off and he was rucking by himself. So he was on track for a 36 disposal game as a lone
Mm.
ruckman had he pumped out for the whole game. And we know he can because he usually runs among the most of any player on the field. He normally runs sort of 14, 15 Ks in a game, which has him very high to the top of the running charts. Yeah, if he'd been in the ruck the whole day, who knows what he could have done.
Yeah, I mean, he's slowly starting to creep up, isn't he? Like I think last week he had a really good game as well. Pointed out the good little things he did the week before that. I think he was highest for 1 percenters prior. So I think he's getting more opportunity in the game. He's also played more games than some of the other guys have, including Laddams, in any of the roles. So yeah, so I expect for him to be maturing as a player, but yeah, as the numbers you're suggesting there, pretty happy. And the highest rating points is the one done by Champion Data.
That's that.
So
Okay, yeah.
yeah, so to see him at the top of that is like wow. Okay, so he must be doing a bunch of things collectively that just are giving him enough rating points to kind of see him as pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with the way that's all gone. Um,
Yeah.
I will pick up a couple here. Chad and Millsy were both good, very good, in fact. But yeah, and Chad in particular making proper impact around the ground. Millsy playing an excellent like anchor role. So yeah, but unfortunately, just couldn't get enough done for the day. They definitely tried, and their effort, execution was there. Any other names to throw into the mix, mate?
No, just generally say on our midfield. I mean, our midfield was good, but their midfielder is deep. Their midfield is deeper, and I think their midfield depth is the envy of the competition. And our young guys, they weren't disgraced against them. Okay, we got run over in the end, but they were in it for 3 quarters. And Collingwood is going to be tough for everyone to beat this year. So
Yep.
I'm not as sort of asking big questions as I was like after we got thrashed by Melbourne or Geelong, for example.
Yep, no, I agree to that. Also, playing back at the MCG against a big 71,000 crowd, they didn't shirk at all. They were in it. So yeah, and they kept the crowd out of it, as I suggest, as well for most of the game. And could be just a sleepy Collingwood crowd on a Sunday, but nonetheless, it was yeah, I'm pretty happy with the effort there. Anyway, none of this. I don't want to hear any of these Melbourne pundits suggesting that it's the hoodoo from the grand final. I think we just got a very different team going on. All right, mate, let's get stuck into the post game. Injuries. We've got two to talk of. Laddams, of course, with that arm stinger or whatever he had on his left arm. He played out the game, so I don't suggest that there was too much in that. Maybe just something to watch, and hopefully he gets up for next week. And Sheila with a knee hyperextension. He looked pretty sore at the time. He came off, got some work done, and went for a bit of a run. It seemed like he could move, but it wasn't looking fantastic. So I suspect that we don't see him for at least a week. Anything else? Yeah, MRO, a bit of rough stuff in the first quarter. Dako St. Papley and Clarkey getting involved. As you suggested, a few fines going out there, but not a whole lot to speak of. Nothing's going out to the MRO directly. And yeah, so we can talk about replacements. Mate, Hickey played VFL. Did you manage to watch the game at all?
I didn't see it. No, I've looked at the match report and the stat sheet from the VFL. I didn't see the game.
Hmm. Yeah, the words that I'm getting is that he's not really lighting it up. I don't know whether he's just taking it easy to get to get his legs into gear before he goes back onto the AFL, or whether it's like a form thing. But you have to imagine that we are desperate to get him and his type back, also give some support for Laddams. Laddams who seems to be getting banged up a bit. So we probably will see him back. You've got here Stevens played a pretty good game in the reserves, it looks like.
It's based on the stat sheet list and the coaches report. I mean, there was a brief report. I think it was on the Swans website, the AF website, or somewhere. It just said, yeah, Stevens was very good. He had 29 touches, 10 tackles, 8 inside 50s. He's one of the best in the reserves. And you'd think that with poor young Sheether hurt, then that spot's available. The guy, I was thinking about this just now when you mentioned that fight in the first quarter, and there's a bit where Sheether gets slung to the ground and I think jumped on or whatever. And in his first game at the MCG, he's been thrown to the ground. He's got in a fight. He's kicked a goal off his shin, and then he's got hurt all in a half of football. Like, so,
he's had a bit of a day, didn't he?
yeah, he's had a busy day.
Yeah.
So he's unfortunately going to be out, which I think is a shame because he showed some good signs. He certainly goes hard, which is nice to see these young players who really just come in and throw themselves at that. And it would have been nice to see at least a few more weeks of him to get an idea of what he's got. But yeah, he'll be out. Stevens is probably the most likely to come in from that. I mean, the others in the reserves that popped up, at least in the match report and the stat sheet, was Will Gould seemed to do quite well. Warner, McAndrew, the young ruck, were all solid. But we're not going to fix the goal kicking problem from the VFL because the Swans VFL probably did they play before or after the senior Swans? I can't remember.
I think before in the morning.
Yeah, so maybe the seniors were inspired by the reserves. The Swans VFL kicked 7-15, which is pretty poor. 7-15 to 9-6 and a 3-point loss to Frankston. Haven't won a game yet, the Swans reserve, so they're not exactly in great form. So we don't really have that many people bashing down the door. What's happened to Sheldrick? Did I miss that? Did he get injured or something? Have I missed this? Where is he?
Yeah. So I think last week, what happened to him last week? Something happened. It looked like I didn't think that it was going to be out though. Or do we? Let me have a quick look.
He didn't seem to play. At least I couldn't see his name on the team list for the VFL. So it looks like he didn't play VFL after having not been picked for the seniors.
Yeah, so no, nothing for last. We got no notes here that suggesting that he
Yeah.
was injured at all. So yeah, it's a bit of
So
surprise, really.
yeah,
Yeah.
so we're not sure what's going on with him, but he would be one of the names that would potentially be in the mix at least. And
Mm.
Constanti played also in the VFL, the young our top draft pick from last year, I think pick 19 or 20. He played, got about half a dozen touches, but he's gradually coming back from quite a long injury, so we're not expecting him straight away at least. But hopefully by the end of the year we see some more footage from him.
Yeah, and I think it just kind of points out that in terms of some quality VFL standard stuff in our VFL team, we don't have quite a lot going on. So we've already kind of activated Francis. Gould's had a crack. He will likely probably see some more game this year, you'd imagine. Sheldrick is the other one who we're all kind of excited about. We can see that he's probably at AFL standard. Um, and we've already tried out Sheether, and who else have we tried so far? So
Corey Warner had a game. Yeah,
Corey Warner, of course.
he
Thank
looks
you.
good. I wouldn't mind
Mm.
seeing him back again, but if I want to beat Fremantle next week, then I'm probably going to be conservative and I'd rather Stevens come in because you know what you're going to get out of him at least.
Yep, yeah, agree to that. So yeah, so we are a bit light. We don't have the players like Callum Sinclair as backup. We don't have Ronke. You don't have Lewis Roberts Thompson. No, Lewis far out. Lewis Roberts
He's,
Thompson.
he'd
He's
be welcome
long
back
gone.
in the back
Yeah,
line. We could use him right now.
just roll the dice, go for it.
Yeah.
Oh bugger, what's his name? We got him from Brisbane, first round pick. Anyway, um,
Craig
so
Bolton? No.
no, no, not Craig Bolton. He went on
Got
to
him from Brisbane. He's
Essendon and played the years out there.
another
Yeah,
backman that could still probably slot in for us just to
yeah,
get us through
yeah.
until Rampy's back.
Yeah, so Bell, for instance, Wicks has been injured. So there are some players that um,
Oh, Lewis Taylor, you're talking about him.
Lewis Taylor, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so we are missing some. We didn't sign these players because we had a new crop that we were interested in seeing out. So we saw some of these gentlemen head off to other clubs or effectively retire. Colin O'Regan is an example of that, another backman who we likely would have liked to have seen still in the game. So yeah, a bit tight on the VFL. So what we've got in the AFL as it stands now, plus or minus one or two, and the guys in injury with Reedy, Hickey, Paddy McCard, and Rampy. That's what we're looking at right now. So we are a bit light. So the season is going to be a bit scary if there's a couple more injuries that come our way. That's for sure,
Yeah.
mate.
And
If we get
Wicks is
stuck in
injured
it,
too. He's another one.
yeah,
Just before we go on that, yeah. So Sam Wicks, he's another guy that if we were looking for someone from that depth like that, somewhere in the 20th to 25th best player on the list or whatever, he's one that could come in and play a role. But he's been injured also. So
yeah, his shoulder. I don't know how his shoulder could damage. I saw him in real life. He's an absolute beast. It's the biggest shoulders I've ever seen in my life. Like a swimmer's body. You know what I mean? Like a V.
yeah, right.
Skinny legs though. So I hope he's been working on those legs. That's all I'm saying. Get some of that power going. All right, so we got Frio at home, which is super exciting because they are a team that we should get over. All right, let me put this properly. We should get over. They've not been themselves, mate. What have you seen from Frio?
They have not been good. I mean, but
No.
we look at Frio and look at the Swans, and we think, okay, Frio's been pretty pathetic this year. They've won 3 and 5. We've won 3 and 5. They've not beaten anyone good. They've beaten the Eagles, the Suns, and the Hawks. We beat the Suns, the Hawks, and Richmond, who aren't looking particularly fantastic at the moment. But Fremantle have the additional honour of having managed to lose to North Melbourne. So I guess that puts us ahead. They've looked pretty bad. I watched a couple of their games this year, and they just haven't looked competitive a lot of the time. Like they just, I don't know what's going on with them because they were a finals team last year. Remember
Mm.
last year we had that game late in the season where we went over to Perth and beat Fremantle against the odds, and there was that famous hug between Chad Warner and John Longmire because
Mm.
Warner had a best on ground, and that was a huge win for the Swans at the time because Freo was a top 4 contender. Like something has happened since then. I don't know what, but yeah, they're not running well.
No, I mean I was well on the Frio bandwagon last year. I was like, oh, they're going to be a good team, and I was quite excited. And during this preseason, they lost some of their forwards, and they don't have forwards. They don't have a lineup there that's going to get them too many goals. They don't have. It looks like they're pretty disorganized up there too. So although they've got great guys like Caleb Sarong and things that they're going to be great for a long, long time, that we could have gotten, but we didn't. We went with Deal Stevens. Um, yeah, I just don't see what else they're doing. I mean, they're not competitive at the moment. We're showing signs of it, and so this is a game to galvanize ourselves, head back to the SCG, and just take the good effort that we had this week and really run with it for next week. This is a must-win game of the season. That's the way I see it, mate. You agree?
Totally. I mean, I think for both teams, like
Mm,
we just said that both teams are 3-5. Both teams have got percentage in about the high 90s. I think we're about 99 and they're 95 or 6 or something. The percentages. After this game, the loser, assuming it's not a draw, the loser is 3-6 and looking very, very sick for the season because that's a long way to come back from. All of a sudden, you're 3.5 wins out of touch of 8th place based on how the rest of the ladder's looking, and you really are going to have to probably win, 80 to 90% of your remaining matches throughout the season to have any chance of even sliding into the 8 from 3-6 out of 9. It's not a good place to be. The winner is looking marginally better at what, 4-5. Swans have got a couple of winnable games coming up after that. There's North Melbourne and I think Carlton, who haven't really impressed anyone yet, or at least they haven't impressed me. Yeah, they don't look terrible, but they also don't look like a top 4 team. Like they look like,
yeah.
and we were talking about this before. Like I think that this year there's a top 4. You got Collingwood, Melbourne, Geelong, and Brisbane standing out so far after 8 rounds. They look like the goods, and then you got a whole bunch of teams from 5th down to about 12th. That depending on who manages to win their games, they should win, and maybe pinch a couple off the top teams will fill up the bottom half of the top 8, like 5th
Mm,
through to 8th, and that's what the Swans I think are shooting for. We don't win this one against Fremantle though; we drop off the pace pretty quick. So need to win, and
yep.
and if we don't, then next week is going to be quite a somber chat, I think.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think this week is unfortunately a bit of a line that we must win. Is that for all the points you said there? Then we start really questioning finals. Like at that point, reassess your expectations. Right now, top 8 is the goal. This week is a must win for that to happen. All right. Well, any predictions you want to make about the game?
I know you don't like to make predictions. I'm not going
Uh,
to push you to do it. I will.
Go
I'm
for
going
it.
to say that the Swans. Look, we've had a bit of an up and down season. There's been some injuries. We've got most of the guys back now, not all of them, and especially not two particularly important ones in those 2 key defenders, Rampy and Paddy McCartan. To be lovely to have at least one of them back. We don't have them. We can't imagine that we do, so we've got to adjust. Um, and I think that in patches of that game, especially in that second quarter against Collingwood, who is the benchmark team this year so far, the Swans show that they can play really, really good football. And if they bring that to Fremantle, then they will win, and they'll probably win by 30-ish points, probably more. If they turn up like they turned up against the Giants, then Fremantle might get a win out of it, and we don't want to let that happen. And it's going to be about effort. Football always comes down to effort, and I'm backing the Swans in to play well. And the reserves are going to get their first win too. I'm going to say that it's going to be a double for the day because the Swans, the VFL play outside. What's that field called across the road from the gates? The drive around new
Tramway.
field.
Is it Tramway?
Yes, yeah, that one. Yeah, so the Swans VFL are going to play there beforehand. So get down there. Hopefully they get a win against I think Williamstown. I've got written here who are about 5th or 6th on the table, so it might be a tough game, but hopefully they get a win. And yep, Swans are going to beat Freo. That is my prediction.
Love it. Wins across the whole club, needing it at this point for sure. Well, wrapping into one last thing. Happy birthday to Swan superfan Talia. His birthday is today on Tuesday. It's a shame we couldn't get up for her birthday. But having said that, her favourite player, Goulden, got the message and he had an absolute cracking game. So
He
happy
sure
birthday,
did.
Talia. Yeah.
Yeah,
What, any last things for you, mate?
I do, mate. Did you know that there's a very special event happening at halftime in the Swans Fremantle game on Saturday?
What's that?
The Wiggles. The Wiggles are going to play a gig at
Oh,
halftime. The Wiggles, man.
the
Can you
Wiggles.
believe the one and only Wiggles? Like this is when I saw that, I texted my sister because Like all of my nieces and nephews love the Wiggles, but the ones that live in Australia, half of them live in Canada. But the ones that live in Australia are mega Wiggles fans. I texted my sister straight away and said, "Right, this is what's happening." And so they're trying to see if they can get down from the coast, like Central Coast. They're trying to see if they can get down for it or not. But yeah, the Wiggles are going to do a gig at halftime. I've been. Have you been to see a Wiggles concert before? Have you been to one?
No. I mean, I don't have any nephews or anything that are young enough to, or nieces that would be young enough to take. So if I went, it'd just be proper weird.
Well, next time I go, you can come along as like my plus one. We can enjoy it together. It's amazing. We go with all of the bevy kids. We can make a day of it. We went last time. Actually, I went there. It was before my youngest niece was even born, and it was my one nephew who was about 1.5 at the time. Me, both my sisters, and both my parents and my sister's husband. So so 6 adults to one child is not considered at all weird at a Wiggles concert. It was like
I'm
full
pretty sure
entourage.
that's unnecessary to have that many people following through. A 1.5-year-old probably doesn't even know what he's doing there. So.
He had the time of his life. He loved it, and it's amazing. They play 2 gigs, right? They play at 10 o'clock in the morning. We went on a Saturday down to that stadium next to Homebush, like next to the Olympic Stadium, that whatever it's called arena where they do the concerts.
Yeah, Horden. Yeah, Horden Pavilion.
No, not that one. No, the
Okay.
one where they play like it's like about a 10-ish thousand capacity, whatever that one's called.
I don't know.
It's always named after a different sponsor's name.
Oh, at
Um,
Homebush, Blundstone
yeah,
Arena, whatever they call it these days. Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
that one is. Yeah. So we went down there, and they play 2 gigs on a Saturday, one at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then one again at 1 p.m. They sell them both out. It's insane. Like so you're going to experience an amazing show if you stick around at halftime. Don't run down to the what's it called, the Four Pines Bar. Is that the one under the sticks for you guys? Yep. Stay away from there. Stick in your seats because you're going to have a front row thing for the best show in town. So even if the football's crap, it'll be great.
I always thought that the Wiggles concerts were like over $100 a ticket. Like it's
I don't think it was
event.
cheap. I don't think. Yeah, so you get the cheap gig.
Oh my god! Oh, yeah, this is a game of football that really changed the freaking season for us. I love it.
It's all happening at the SCG on Saturday. So that's my last thing. I think I just spoke for 5 minutes about the Wiggles
on a football podcast. That's all right. Oh yeah, by the way, go Swannies. But yeah, all right.
Yeah, go Swans. Yep.
Especially the red swan, the red Wiggle. Yeah. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the episode.
Not the purple Wiggle. I hope the purple Wiggle falls off the stage or something.
All right, we got a story there. We'll have to tell another day. Well, that brings us to the end of the episode again. So on behalf of Bob, thank you very much for listening in. Make sure to follow us wherever you get your Swannies news. But we'll see you at the SCG in the O'Reilly stand. But until then, up the Bloods and can you Swannies?
Swannies.